Dr Gary Jenkins is remembered by his clients, colleagues, family and friends as a loving, caring and intelligent man. A man who has helped countless patients as a psychiatrist, bringing them back from the brink of depression. He was a dedicated father, a talented musician, and generally a man who embraced all of the good things in life. Dr Jenkins had been a consultant psychiatrist serving over 20 years for the National Health Service and was hoping to soon go into semi-retirement to enjoy the simpler things in life, like exploring nature and spending more quality time with friends and family. However, on the night of Tuesday, July the 20th in 2021, Dr Gary Jenkins met an extremely brutal end at the hands of three unlikely assailants in Bute Park, Cardiff, Wales. The violent group consisted of Jason Edwards, Strickland and Dionne Timms-Williams. Shockingly, Timms-Williams was just a 16-year-old girl when she took part in the torture and murder of Dr Jenkins, and even more shockingly, Edwards and Strickland had only just met Timms-Williams on the night of the savage killing. This crime left Cardiff and beyond in a state of deep shock and immense sadness. Who was Dionne Timms-Williams? What led up to this 16-year-old girl finding herself on the streets of Cardiff in the dead of night, miles from home? How did she wind up quickly forming a toxic trio with Edwards and Strickland, a trio that went on to carry out the brutally sadistic torture and murder of the much-loved Dr Gary Jenkins? Hello and welcome. My name is Ben and you have reached the Curio Lounge today. Just an FYI before we get into this case. I post regular true crime and real mysteries videos here, so that sounds like it might be right up your street. Please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss my future videos. Also, be sure to leave a like rating so I know that you've stopped by. Just another FYI, I've enjoyed the growing engagement on my videos recently, and I just want to let you know that I do appreciate every single interaction. I do read all of your comments, so be sure to leave your thoughts down below and expand the discussion on this truly shocking story. And just one last FYI, if you fancy checking me out on X and Instagram, the links are down below in the description, and the handles are on the screen right now. Feel free to take a look, and as always, be nice. With all of that out of the way, let's get right into the case of Dionne Timms-Williams, a girl next door who turned into the smirking teenage killer. Our story today takes us to Bute Park in Cardiff. Cardiff is the capital and largest city of Wales, located in the southeast of the country. It serves as a significant cultural, political and economic hub in the region. Cardiff's history dates back to Roman times when it was established as a settlement. The city grew significantly during the 19th century due to the Industrial Revolution, becoming a major port for coal export from the South Wales valleys. By 1905, it was granted city status and became the capital of Wales in 1955. Some of Cardiff's biggest attractions are Cardiff Castle, the Principality Stadium, the National Museum and Cardiff Bay. Once the world's largest coal exportation port, the bay has been repurposed into a vibrant waterfront area with shops, restaurants, the Wales Millennium Centre and the Welsh Parliament building. Whilst Cardiff's industrial past was centred around coal and shipping, today the city's economy is diversified, with sectors in finance, media, education and tourism playing significant roles. Cardiff is a key centre for media production in the UK, housing major facilities for the BBC, including where the popular TV series Doctor Who is produced. As a bilingual city, English and Welsh are commonly spoken. The Welsh language has seen a revival in recent years, with more emphasis on its use in education and public life. When it comes to sports, Cardiff is particularly famous for rugby, with the local team Cardiff Rugby and the National Welsh Rugby team drawing significant attention. Overall, Cardiff is a dynamic city that balances its rich history with modern development, making it a vibrant place to visit or live. Bute Park, where the tragedy of the story takes place, is situated in the heart of Cardiff. It is a large historic green space offering a peaceful retreat from the urban environment. Its beautiful, tranquil and natural surroundings are a stark contrast to the sheer horror that took place within its confines. Dionne Timms-Williams was born in 2005 and lived with her parents in the Vale of Glamorgan village, Craigie, which is around 7 miles northwest of Cardiff. Her mother is a company director and her father is a highly skilled mechanic. They all lived in a terraced house in a commuter village in what was, by all accounts, the perfect family setup. The family's neighbours have gone on record as saying that Timms-Williams was a lovely girl who was often quiet but always friendly and polite to those she met. One neighbour in particular stated that she was, quote, sweet and pretty grown up and was never in any kind of trouble. One other neighbour told The Sun online she used to make decorations out of wildflowers and sell them for charity. To quote another neighbour of hers, Timms-Williams was seen as a daddy's girl who would spend as much time as possible helping her mechanic father repair various vehicles. By all accounts, she had aspirations to follow in her father's footsteps and become a mechanic herself when she left school. From the outside, Timms-Williams was leading a fairly normal childhood with no real causes for concern. However, in 2018, at the age of 13, her parents separated, which led to her father leaving the household and Timms-Williams remaining in the family home with her mother. Neighbours, friends and family have gone on to say that she was absolutely devastated when her parents split. Understandable when you consider that it sounded like she had a really strong bond with her father. Timms-Williams and her mother moved to another part of Craigie, and it was known to all around her that these series of events caused a major upheaval for her. This was undoubtedly a turning point for Timms-Williams. Neighbours have come forward to say that soon after her parents split, Timms-Williams began socialising with the wrong crowd, consuming large amounts of alcohol and partaking in drug use. Residents described the teen, who lived in a presentable cul-de-sac, as a Jekyll and Hyde figure whose innocent character transformed when she began consuming drugs. She was like Jekyll and Hyde. There was a huge change in her. I think most people in the village knew she was messing about with drugs. She could look very vacant at times. At the age of 14, she was referred to adolescent mental health services due to poor anger management and intense bouts of anxiety. Psychological reports outlined that she had borderline personality disorder. Timms-Williams also received a police caution in 2019 for possession of a blade. With all of this in mind, no one could have predicted that Dionne Timms-Williams, a 16-year-old who had gone slightly off the rails, would end up being involved in a series of horrific events nearly 10 miles from her home. On the night of Tuesday the 20th of July 2021, Timms-Williams was wandering the streets of Cardiff very intoxicated when she met two strangers on Queen Street in the city centre. These two strangers were 26-year-old Jason Edwards and 36-year-old Lee Strickland. The pair had never met Timms-Williams prior to this fateful night. This is the actual street CCTV footage of Timms-Williams meeting them for the very first time, which shows her walking towards them before the pair offer her a can of cider. Again, bearing in mind that she is only 16 years of age, intoxicated and alone in the city centre of Cardiff. As shown in the footage, the trio shared a laugh and a joke before deciding to go and purchase more alcohol. Timms-Williams walked with Strickland and Edwards to the Esso garage on Cathedral Road, where they purchased further cans of cider. The trio's intention was to head over to Bute Park, not only to continue with their drinking session, but to engage in disgusting acts of depravity. Witnesses heard Timms-Williams saying, "If we're going to stay in f***ing Bute Park, can we at least go and steal?" Although we touched upon what Bute Park was like earlier in the video, it has to be said that after dark, the area takes on a different form as opposed to in the daylight hours. Bute Park is known for being a meeting place for adult men to casually meet and engage in adult activities. The newly formed toxic trio were aware of this and decided to head to Bute Park in search of innocent victims. The group were heard referring to the place as Dirty Park, as they planned to head to the area to carry out unspeakable acts. Timms-Williams, Strickland and Edwards entered Bute Park in the early hours of the morning and spent time drinking in the seating area outside the Summer House Cafe, opposite the Millennium Bridge. Aside from everything else that was about to unfold, it's fairly shocking to note that these two fully grown men not only helped a 16-year-old girl obtain more alcohol, but also agreed to walk with her to a park in the dead of night. This aspect of the case alone is something that is questionable, chilling, and downright strange. Nevertheless, the trio proceeded into Bute Park with the intention of finding a victim. Dr Gary Jenkins was not actually the first person in the park that was approached by the toxic trio. Owen Hill had the misfortune of encountering the group, and he only suffered some verbal abuse and intimidation centered around his sexuality. For whatever reason, they decided to not physically assault Hill or even steal from him, and he managed to go on his way unharmed. It is thought that the trio were assessing Hill at the time in terms of whether they could successfully overpower him or not. Fortunately for Hill, some kind of unanimous decision was made at that very moment and he went on his way. However, The next victim this toxic trio approached would not be so fortunate. Dr Gary Jenkins later passed by the Summerhouse Cafe, and Timms-Williams, Strickland and Edwards were still loitering nearby. The three approached the 54-year-old psychiatric consultant before the grueling physical and verbal attack commenced. Although closed for the night, the Summerhouse Cafe's security system started recording audio of the horrendous assault. The attack began with severe verbal abuse, which was clearly picked up by the cafe's sound recording system. What can clearly be heard is the whole group, including Timms-Williams, firing these vicious remarks at Dr Jenkins. The recording also very clearly picked up horrendous audio of heavily violent blows being delivered to Dr Jenkins. It is beyond any shadow of a doubt that these sounds were that of extreme violence being inflicted upon the helpless psychiatrist. Also captured by the recording equipment was the trio encouraging one another, shouting phrases such as "stamp on his head," "keep going," in what is some of the most harrowing recorded audio anyone could witness. If that wasn't shocking enough, Dionne Timms-Williams herself can clearly be heard on the recording screaming, "Get down, do it all over again, do it," and "hit him again." One of the males in their group is then heard saying, "Stamp on his head too." Interspersed with these chants, Timms-Williams can clearly be heard firing insults at Dr Jenkins, calling him things such as a pig and a dick. Other phrases screamed out by Timms-Williams included "money" and "money now." Dr Jenkins was punched, kicked and stamped on by all three members of the group in what was a grueling ordeal that lasted nearly 30 minutes. Around 14 minutes of the attack was recorded by the Summerhouse Cafe security systems. Dr Jenkins can be heard pleading with the trio with "please stop" and "please get off me." However, these pleas for help only seem to be met with ever-increasing violence and verbal abuse. The toxic trio completely ignored Dr Jenkins' appeals to stop and instead decided to intensify the horrific attack. It seemed that the trio were indulging in some sort of bloodthirsty sport and enjoying every passing minute. At some point, passerby Louis Williams saw the attack taking place and tried to protect Dr Jenkins from the violent trio, sadly to no avail. Even the attempted intervention of Williams wasn't enough to stop the ongoing assault on Dr Jenkins. With no regard for his own safety, Louis Williams did whatever he could to protect Dr Jenkins, but sadly, and through no fault of his own, his efforts could not prevent the damage that had already been done. During the prolonged attack, the group pulled Dr Jenkins' blood-soaked trousers down, presumably as a final act of humiliation. Louis Williams recalled later on that the trio laughed at the situation when he asked them to stop, and that they seemed to be enjoying whatever they were doing. At the end of the attack, the group then hugged each other and Timms-Williams was heard saying, "Yeah, I needed that." Before the trio vacated the scene, leaving Dr Jenkins in a critical condition, they stole his mobile phone and credit cards. As Dr Jenkins was fighting for his life in Bute Park, with many passers-by coming to his aid, Lee Strickland walked to a nearby petrol station with Dr Jenkins' credit card in hand. This is actual CCTV footage of Strickland presenting Dr Jenkins' credit card to purchase whiskey, which, according to the timestamp, was barely 8 minutes after their attack on Dr Jenkins. Just minutes later, Timms-Williams and Strickland were filmed sharing hugs and kisses before parting ways, as if they had just finished a regular night out. This sickening display of affection is in stark contrast to the torturous attack they inflicted upon Dr Jenkins just moments prior. Seemingly, without a single care in the world, Dionne Timms-Williams casually went to spend the rest of the evening/early hours of the morning at a friend's house, only briefly stopping beforehand at a petrol station to recharge her mobile phone. At some point during the evening, Timms-Williams' mother messaged Dionne asking, "Do you want picking up?" She replied, "No, I'm okay, thanks." On face value, this text exchange would convince anyone that nothing out of the ordinary happened with Timms-Williams during that evening. Just minutes after saying goodbye to Timms-Williams, Edwards reunited with Strickland on Queen Street, the very same street they had met Timms-Williams earlier that evening for the very first time. What you're about to see is the actual CCTV footage of this reunion, showing them embrace in a hug. It can clearly be seen that Strickland has the bottle of whiskey he purchased with Jenkins' stolen credit card. Strickland can then be seen sharing the ill-gotten whiskey with Edwards on Queen Street. The CCTV footage shows the pair seemingly happy celebrating just minutes after the attack. Simultaneously, Jenkins was rushed to the University Hospital of Wales, where he was fighting for his life as a result of the prolonged, extremely violent attack. His extensive list of injuries included brain and skull damage, a broken nose, a fractured jawline, and multiple fractures to the rib cage. On the night of the attack, police were quick to respond, and whilst Dr Jenkins was fighting for his life, both Edwards and Strickland were apprehended and arrested. Here is the actual bodycam footage of their arrest. During the arrest, the police bodycam footage clearly picked up items recovered from Strickland and Edwards' clothing, including credit cards in the name of Dr Gary Jenkins. The credit card police recovered, as seen in the bodycam footage, was the very same card Strickland used to purchase the whiskey earlier that night at the petrol station. Footage of Dr Jenkins handling the same credit card of his was later recovered, and this was just another line of damning evidence of what exactly took place on this gruesome night. The following morning, Timms-Williams left her friend's house and made her way home. However, the police later arrested her at her residence following the day of the assault. As investigations commenced, the news rolled in that Dr Gary Jenkins sadly lost his fight for survival, and he passed away as a direct result of the injuries on the 8th of August, just over 2 weeks after the attack. This means that the proceedings moved from an attempted murder and robbery to a murder investigation, and the trio were charged accordingly. The police interrogation footage with Timms-Williams that took place on the 27th of July, about a week before Dr Jenkins passed away, shows her wrapped in a blanket and pouting, seemingly in an attempt to portray herself as an innocent party in this situation.
Okay, right. In this in the storyboard that we've got, there's several photos of you, and as you accept in your statement, you are a female one. Where are the clothes that you were wearing that night?
No comment.
Okay. So I think when you're first seen on the cam, you've got like a jacket on, possibly either black socks or black tights with black at the bottom. They look like Vans trainers. Can you tell me where we can find those clothes?
No comment.
Where's the Nike bag that you had with you on that night? Is there any reason that you can't or won't tell me where those clothes in that bag are?
No comment.
Have you got rid of them or thrown them away?
No comment.
Following her arrest, she sought to pin the blame on Edwards and Strickland by claiming she was intimidated by them and was forced to take part in the savage beating of Jenkins. But as we learned earlier, audio footage taken from the cafe from inside the park revealed the opposite. All three of the accused pled guilty to manslaughter from the time Dr Jenkins passed away as a result of his injuries. However, they are all charged with murder, meaning the case had to go to trial, and the families attending the trial were subjected to the harrowing audio and video footage captured on the night of Dr Jenkins' attack. By all accounts, Edwards and Strickland were not taking the trial seriously, and at one point were seen signalling and smiling at each other. This caused so much distress to Dr Jenkins' family that at one point they had to be removed from the courtroom until they were required for questioning again. Dr Jenkins' family and friends had to learn just what happened to him on this fateful evening. They were subject to all the eyewitness accounts, CCTV footage and audio recordings of this brutal, sadistic attack. We can only imagine what they had to go through day after day during their time in court. The trial also revealed that one of Timms-Williams' friends agreed to provide her with a false alibi. Shortly after the attack, Timms-Williams contacted Lewis Newman, who was 17 at the time, just hours after the assault, asking him to lie about her whereabouts that evening. She asked him that if he was ever questioned by police, that he was to tell them that she spent the night with him. The only information that Timms-Williams provided Newman at the time that she was involved in a serious incident. When Timms-Williams told the police her whereabouts that evening, Newman verified this false information when questioned. By all accounts, this was a case of misplaced loyalty on the part of Newman, because he was known to be somewhat in awe of Timms-Williams and would have provided this false alibi without question. Newman was a somewhat naive party in this situation, due to being an easy target for Timms-Williams and being completely unaware of the seriousness of the trouble she was in. Newman was allegedly somewhat infatuated with Timms-Williams and was more than keen to do this favour for her. It has to be made clear that Newman's statement did not adversely affect the investigation, nor did it affect Dr Jenkins' condition. During the time of Newman's false statement, this was not yet a murder investigation. Newman pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice and was sentenced to 6 months in a young offenders institution. He was ordered to undergo 150 hours of community service and pay a victim surcharge of £128, around $168. On Tuesday, the 22nd of March 2022, each member of the toxic trio received their sentencing. Jason Edwards, born 4th of March 1996, was originally from Liverpool, England. He moved to Cardiff sometime during his early 20s and resided in Lichfield Court, Riverside. Imaginatively, his nickname was Scouse. At the age of 26 years old, at the time of the sentencing, Edwards had 35 previous convictions. Edwards was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 33 years for the murder of Dr Gary Jenkins. If Edwards is released after this minimum term, then it would be the year 2055 and he would be 59 years old. Edwards was known to socialise with homeless people in the city centre of Cardiff, and this is how he met co-defendant Lee Strickland. Strickland was born on the 11th of June 1985. He was of no fixed abode and by all accounts has never been in employment and relied on staying with anyone he could. At this point, at the age of 35, Strickland had 58 previous convictions. Strickland received the same sentence as Edwards, life imprisonment with a minimum of 33 years. If Strickland is released after this minimum term, then he would be 69 years old. Both Edwards and Strickland claim to have no memory of the entire night in question and have shown absolutely zero remorse for the offences they committed against Dr Jenkins. Judge Daniel Williams stated that the mitigating factors in the sentencing was that the murder was for personal gain and the murder was aggravated by hostility related to Dr Gary Jenkins' sexual orientation. And finally, we come to the sentencing of Dionne Timms-Williams herself. During most of the trial, little was known about her due to her age at the time. She was granted anonymity by the courts. However, due to the severity of her sentencing, the reporting restrictions were lifted and her identity was revealed across many media outlets. At the time of sentencing in March 2022, she was 17 years of age, and Judge Daniel Williams sentenced her to life detention with a minimum of 17 years for her part in the murder of Dr Gary Jenkins. When considering her sentencing, her claims of being an innocent party were dismissed due to the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Judge Daniel Williams stated, "Dionne Timms-Williams, you were referred to adolescent mental health services when you were 14 because of overwhelming anxiety and anger. You have a caution in 2019 for possessing an item with a blade. I have read psychological and psychiatric reports on you which say that you have a borderline personality disorder. The report specifically says that there is nothing in your past which impaired your ability to understand the nature of what you did on this night. Although you have uttered the words, there is no real evidence that you are sorry." Based on the audio and video evidence, her involvement was not deemed to be an act of homophobia. Part of that judgment was also the fact that she had just come out of a same-sex relationship. She is to serve several years in juvenile detention before being moved to an adult prison. Her sentence was a life detention with a minimum of 17 years. If Timms-Williams was to serve this minimum term, it would be the year 2039 and she would be 34 years old. We can't discuss Timms-Williams' sentencing without addressing her now infamous mugshot. Her smirking, almost arrogant facial expression captured when being booked in is one of the most shocking aspects of this case. It almost has an air of pride and smugness about it, as if at the time she was confident that whatever went down, she was probably going to walk away to freedom. I mean, what even is this mugshot? While sentencing, Judge Daniel Williams said, "Why the three of you formed such a toxic mix is something which may never be known. It seems each of you wanted to show off how little you valued human life. You took the life of a man who valued life, his and others, very dearly." This is something that is so extraordinary about this case. Ganging up to fatally attack a random person is one thing, but for this to happen with a pair of men that Timms-Williams had just met moments prior is just beyond comprehension. Not forgetting that none of the three had any previous convictions for extreme violence. Absolutely no one has any answers for the way this fateful night played out, except perhaps for the toxic trio themselves. As reported by Wales Online, Dr Jenkins' family paid tribute to their fallen loved one. Gary was such a kind soul who would never hurt anyone. He was an incredibly generous and creative man who had only good intentions. Gary's private life being put on display through a Crown Court trial has only intensified the impact of this event on our family, friends and colleagues. Gary's untimely death has also had an impact on his parents. Gary was one of the most humane, kind and compassionate doctors one could ever come across. But as a family, we are relieved that justice is done. On March 29th, 2022, South Wales Police posted on their Facebook page after they had received a thank you letter from Dr Jenkins' family. Following Friday's sentencing at Cardiff Crown Court, our Major Crime Investigations team has received feedback from the family of Dr Gary Jenkins. Dear Stuart, Amanda, Mandy and the team, thank you so much for your continued support during this difficult time for our family. We will never forget your outstanding professionalism, your continued presence and support, and your utmost passion for your work. More importantly, your empathy and compassion will stay with us forever with gratitude and our best wishes. From the family of Gary Robert Jenkins. Well, here we are. We made it till the end. Thanks again for joining me in the Curio Lounge today. Do let me know your thoughts on this case in the comments section below, because I do read every comment and like to get involved in the extended discussion myself. I'm really interested to hear what you guys think of this one. I'll see you down there. Remember, I post true crime and real mysteries videos here regularly, so if that sounds like it might be your thing, maybe think about subscribing. Also, don't forget to leave a like rating so I know that you've stopped by. If you found this one interesting, I've picked out another one of my videos you might want to watch. It's on screen right now, so feel free to explore that one next. Just before I do sign off, if you've been affected by any of the topics raised in this video, there will be some relevant links in the comment section below. Anyway, that's about it. I'm off now because there's some more shocking true crime cases that need to be covered, so I'll see you.